Hi there, and thank you for joining me. In this video, we are looking at solving algebraic equations. First of all, I'm going to have a look at how you can solve simple ones simply by using a little bit of common sense and some very basic maths knowledge. And then we'll look at a more formal method. I know there are a couple of ways you can do this. I am going to be solving equations by rearranging formula. Let's go. Before we start looking at a more formal approach to solving equations, I just want to have a look at this idea that you can just use common sense in some situations. So on the board here, we have a typical equation and we're being asked to find the value of x. So the common sense approach is to say, okay, we have 2x plus 8 equals 20. So this means that something, this 2x, when it's added to 8, is going to give us the answer 20. So we have to find something that would add to 8 to make 20. Well, of course, the answer is 12. So that must mean that this 2x equals 12. So if 2x equals 12, then 1x must equal 6. Therefore, by using a little bit of common sense and just basic maths knowledge, you have come to an answer. And if you can do that, and certainly it's possible with a lot of the more straightforward equation questions, there is nothing wrong with using common sense to find an answer. Now, unfortunately, we're going to get to a situation whereby equations are a little too complex for us to use such a simple method. We need to look at something more formal. Now, I am going to look at solving equations by rearranging the equation, and we want to get to a situation where we have the x on one side of the equation and everything else on the other. There are a couple of different approaches to this. I am going to use the method whereby I am going to move things from one side of an equation to another. And in order to do that, we need some rules. So rule 1 is that if I am going to move something, a number, a letter, or a term, if it is going to move from one side of an equation to the other, it will change its function to the opposite of what it is. In other words, if something is currently a plus, like the 8 that we see here, if I move it to the other side, it becomes a minus. Similarly, a minus becomes a plus. Also, something that is currently being multiplied will turn into a divide, and a divide will turn into a multiply. The other rule that we are going to follow, well, we're actually going to use BIDMAS, but in this case, I'm going to write it backwards, because to perform this operation, we actually use BIDMAS in the other direction, so that when we are moving things, the first things we are going to move is anything that is being subtracted or added. Then we are going to move the multiplications and the divisions. The indices and brackets would come last. So let's start by using the same equation that we had before. We have 2x plus 8 equals 20. Now, as I said before, I want everything except the x to move to the other side. And if I am going to use BIDMAS backwards, then the first thing I'm going to do is move anything that is being added or subtracted. Therefore, I'm going to move the 8. So this 8 is going to switch to the other side of the equation. It's good practice with algebra like this to take everything one step at a time. So I am leaving the 2x where it is. The equal sign comes next. The 20 is staying where it is, but I am moving the 8, and don't forget, a plus becomes a minus, so this now becomes 20 minus 8. I can use my next line just to tidy things up, because that now says that 2x equals, well, 20 minus 8 is simply 12. Now it's time to move again. The only thing left on the left-hand side that I don't want is the 2, so that is also going to move to the other side. Now, let's have a look at the function that this 2 is performing. Currently, it is a 2 times x. It is being multiplied by the x. That means if it's a multiply on this side, it has to become a divide on the other. So in order to show that, we put it on the bottom, 12 divided by 2. Our final line then is to work out the answer, because 12 divided by 2 is 6. Let's have a look at a very similar one. This time we have 4x minus 4 equals 16. So once again, the x needs to be separated from everything else. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the 4x where it is. I am going to move the minus 4 across to the other side. Now this time, don't forget, it is a minus 4, so on the other side it becomes a plus 4. Again, the next line is just to tidy that up. So 4x is 16 plus 4, 4x is 20. We are then going to move the 4. This is the multiply by 4, so if it is a multiply on this side, it becomes a divide on the other. So it becomes 20 divided by 4. Therefore, x, 20 divided by 4, is 5, and there we have our answer. Now let's have a look at this example. It looks a little different, but I am simply going to follow the same rules again. In fact, although it looks strange, there's actually only one step to this. D over 2, d divided by 2, equals minus 4. Therefore, it's the d that I want to get separated. The only connection the d has is with the 2. It is being divided by 2. So I'm going to move that 2. The d stays where it is. The minus 4 stays where it is. Don't forget, this is a divide by 2, so when it moves to the other side, it becomes a times by 2. Therefore, d equals minus 4 times 2 is minus 8. Now let's take things up a little step, and here we have an equation where we have a letter on both sides of the equation. So we've two things to do here. Not only do we have to get the t on one side on its own, we have to get all the t's onto one side. So where would we start? Well, let's follow the BIDMAS backwards rule again and start moving things away from the t here. So we have a minus 4 that we want to move to the other side. So our second line, the 2t is going to stay where it is. We then have t plus 12, and don't forget it's a minus 4, so it becomes a plus 4. We could then tidy up at this stage. 2t equals t plus, well, 12 plus 4 is 16. Now, we do need to get these t's together. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move the actual t here and take this across. Now let's look at what this means for the t. Well, the 2t stays where it is. This at the moment is a plus t. There is no minus on the beginning. It is a positive t. So when I move it across, it's going to become a negative t. And that's going to equal, well, there's only 16 left at that side. So what do we have? We have 2t minus t. Well, 2t's minus a t just make t. Therefore, I have t equals 16. It is worth noting in this case that I could have moved the t first to the left-hand side before I moved the 4. Also, as you become more confident at these, you can, if you are careful, move two things at the same time. So I could have moved the 4 across to the right and the t across to the left in one step. But be careful, doing things a small step at a time is often the best way forward. Let's just have a look at this one and just clarify a couple of things. This looks a little bit different. It's 3y over 7 equals 1. Now again, I need to get the y on its own, so the 3 and the 7 need to be moved across. Now if we use BIDMAS backwards, we have no subtracts and adds. It says the next thing is going to be the multiply, which would be the 3. Now in fact, we can be a little bit relaxed about this. And as long as we've done the subtractions and additions first, we can then move on to the multiples and divides. Which way around you do the two is not so important. And to make this example look a little tidier, the first thing I would move would be the 7. So I'm going to move the 7 across to the other side first. Now again, what is the function of the 7 at the moment? Well, it's divide. It is saying 3y divided by 7. Therefore, that 7 moves to the other side and it changes from a divide to a multiply. So we now have 3y equals 1 times 7 is 7. Then we need to move the 3. Well, at the moment the 3 is multiplying with the y, therefore to move to the other side it has to become a divide. So I've got the answer 7 over 3. Now, a lot of learners tend to try to turn that into a decimal. There is no need. The answer as it stands is a perfectly good fraction. If you wish to do so, you could turn it from an improper fraction into a mixed number and you would end up with y equals 2 and a third. But either of these two answers is perfectly acceptable. Let's just summarize all that again then. We are using BIDMAS, but we are using it backwards. We are taking an equation and we are trying to isolate the letter. We are moving everything else to the other side. First we move any subtractions and additions. After we have dealt with those two, we look at the multiplication and the division, and you can do those either way around. So we are looking to isolate the letter and move everything else. If it is a plus, it goes to the other side and it becomes a minus. Had that 7 there been a minus, it would have gone to the other side and become a plus. We then look at the multiplies and divides. In this case, there is a 3 that is currently a multiply. It goes to the other side and becomes a divide, and the divide becomes a multiply. Take it a step at a time until you are really confident. It doesn't matter if there are 5 or 6 layers of algebra in your answer. You are actually showing the examiner that you thoroughly know the steps that you need to solve the problem. And that's it, how to rearrange a formula in order to find a solution. Do look at that summary part again, taking it step by step, nice and easy, showing you working out is a great way to find the answer. If that has been of any use to you at all, please do subscribe to my channel and hopefully I will see you again in later videos. Thank you.